Hello everyone and welcome back to Circus Tutorials. In today's tutorial we'll be teaching you how to balance an object on your hand and then eventually even how to balance one on your face. So before we get started we have to pick an object to balance. Now big trick is the taller it is the easier it's going to be. So if we start with a nice big wooden dowel like this, is going to be much easier than if we start with something small. Smaller it gets, the harder it gets. And also, if we pick something with a nice amount of weight at the end, something like this golf club or a broom, for example, is going to be even easier than just a straight stick, and I'll explain why in just a second. So now that I have an object, we are ready to begin. I recommend something like this, like a wooden dowel or small plastic pipe, because then as you get better, you can just cut off bits and make it shorter, so as you get better, you can shorten the stick to improve your skills. One thing I do recommend though is take a little bit of sandpaper and round the edges just so there's no sharp bit, especially once we get to our face. So to balance, the easiest way is going to be on our hand at first. So we're going to put it on the tips of our finger, and the trick is look at the top. And technically, you want to be looking a little bit down, so usually about a third of the way down the object, if it's a straight object, where the center of mass is. So if I move the stick really fast, you can see that there's a point here that doesn't really move. That's where the center of mass is going to be. So I keep the bottom underneath that point. So if it starts to fall left, I can chase it left, right, chase it right, forward, backward, same thing, keeping the bottom underneath that point. If I look at the bottom, I don't really get good feedback and it becomes much more difficult than if I look at the top. And this is the same reason that I said that if you have an object with a lot of weight at the top, like a broom or the golf club, it's even easier because that center is even higher up and you get even more time to correct. So we're going to practice that way and make sure that your hand is open. We don't want to be holding on to it saying, look, I got it. No, we want to do it the right way, hand open, a real balance, and start that way. One thing is try not to chase around. If it starts to fall, just go ahead and catch it and start over. We don't want to be chasing it around and accidentally hit somebody or something with it. So if it starts to fall, just grab it and start over. Once you can do this for say 10 seconds, we are ready to try to learn with our face. So I did mention that a longer object is easier when you're starting out. I would recommend that, but I'm just going to use this juggling club for sake of filming. So when we balance it on our face, it's going to be the same idea of balancing it on our hand, of watching that center point of gravity and moving it underneath that to keep it upright. Just now we have to do it with our shoulders and upper body mostly. So you have to pick a spot. The three most common spots to balance using the face is either the forehead, the nose, or the chin. I would recommend when starting out to either go with the forehead or the chin. The nose can be really good, but at first I would not recommend it because if it slides off, it has a tendency to find you in the eye, and we don't want that. So I would recommend forehead and chin at first. Really, once you get the hang of it, it's super easy to just switch in between each of the three spots. So I'll use my forehead for this example, just so you can see my pretty face. When we start, the easiest way is to make a circle with your hands around the object, because we're gonna have to learn where it wants to balance at first. So we're just gonna put it up, keep our hands up, make that little circle, and find out where it wants to start to balance at first. We're just gonna be moving it around, learning that spot at first, until we figure out where it kind of wants to sit and hang out. At this point, we're really not doing much balancing. We're not trying to correct it with our body. We're just trying to get used to visually seeing where that spot is. So that way, once we start to lose the balance, we know where to get back to. And then we're basically just going to start working our way up from there. Keeping our hands up, getting the feel for it, try to keep it balanced, and make a small correction, get it back. Make a small correction, get it back to where it wants to balance. And slowly but surely work our way up to be able to balance for 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. And at first there's going to be a lot of movement happening with your upper body and specifically your legs, because if you start to lose it, you're gonna have to take a step to catch it. But eventually, once we learn that spot and get a little more controlled, rather than making big corrections with our whole body, we start to make little corrections with just our shoulder and our neck, like I was doing. This does take quite a bit of practice to get to this point, to be able to control it with just your neck and shoulders without having to make big movements to correct it with our lower body. But that's why I recommend something long, so that way we can figure out that point much quicker and work our way down. The way that I got really comfortable and really controlled at this was actually practicing it sitting down. It makes it a lot more difficult, but it automatically makes it to where you can't chase it around. And then if it falls onto the ground, it's pretty handy because you can just pick it right back up. So a little bit more about each of the positions. Like I said, the three most common is forehead, nose, and chin. They each are good for different things. So in my case, if I'm going to be doing something in combination like juggling, I tend to like the chin and nose a little bit more than the forehead, because with the forehead now I'm looking up, so if I'm trying to do something here, it splits my vision, and I don't quite like that as much as with the nose or the chin, where I can look through it and now I can see both. I also do like the nose when I'm balancing shorter objects because I get a better viewpoint, a better focal point than if it's on my chin or on my forehead. So if I'm balancing something really small, I like using my nose instead. One thing to keep in mind is the amount of weight as well. We don't want to be putting a lot of weight on our forehead especially, or our chin, because if it's on the chin, it can really make the sides of the jaw here sore. And if it's on the forehead, it'll put a lot of pressure and can make your upper neck very sore as well. So make sure that when you're practicing, you practice in smaller amounts of time and with lighter amount of weight so we don't accidentally hurt ourselves or get sore in the process. And with that, that's going to be the tutorial. I know today was a little bit shorter, but there really isn't as much to go over as with other tutorials. This one really just comes down to a lot of practice and a lot of time. I did say that you can do it with pretty much anything. As long as it's long enough or light enough to be able to balance, you can pretty much balance it. So I'm going to show you with this briefcase, using the corner, find that balance point, and keep it balanced. Just like that. I love this trick because it's so versatile. You can do it with pretty much anything. I love doing it with straws at restaurants. So if you take the wrapper off, make it a little bit taller, it makes it easier, balance the straw. Heavier things like chairs and stuff, really easy to balance because it's so heavy and long, but it is pretty uncomfortable with the amount of pressure that puts on the chin or the forehead, depending on what I'm balancing. With that, that'll bring us to the end. It's YouTube, you know what to do. We do appreciate it. We do like any sort of feedback. So if you want to see a future video on a specific subject, message that below and we'll get to it. Share your progress with us on Facebook and over different social media means. We're going to be looking into starting a Twitter and different things like that so you can more easily get in touch with us. With that, my name has been Chuck Clark and this is Circus Tutorials, and we'll see you in the next one.